exercise powers usually unavailable to them. In December 2019, the Premier's office said that these powers would enable RFS Commissioner Shane Fitzgibbons to direct any government agency to conduct or refrain from conducting its functions, control and coordinate an allocation of government resources, evacuate people from property within the declared area, close roads and thoroughfares to traffic, pull down or shore up infrastructure at risk of collapse, order the shutdown of essential utilities in the declaration area including electricity, gas, oil, water, enter or take possession of property in the course of the emergency response. It is an offence to obstruct emergency personnel. Emergency Management Committee. On behalf of Council, I wish to extend our greatest appreciation to the Emergency Management Committee, EMC, and RFS management and volunteers for the tremendous effort in order of protecting Lithgow and surrounding community during the recent and ongoing fire emergency in our LGA. The EMC, led by the local Emergency Operation Controller, Lithgow, Chris Summit, who in my view, with the assistance of the committee members, conducted the most professional and efficient organisation of relevant resources during the fire emergency, successfully preventing loss of life and mitigating the extent of property damage. My thanks to Chris and his EMC members comprising Libby Stansell, Family and Community Services, Leslie Kent, Zigzag Railway, Kelly Hamilton, Endeavour Energy, Peter Evans and Liam Morrick, Land and Services, Stuart Cope and Petrico Pina from RMS, Chris Samet and Steve Giffney, New South Wales Police. Chris relinquished that role when he took over the controlling position. Angela Lundrican, National Parks, Craig Barra, Regional Emergency Managing Officer. City Trains Transport for New South Wales Ambulance, various attending representatives, Bronwyn Boiling and various alternative representatives, New South Wales Health, Lithgow Fire and Rescue, Mick Holland, Rural Fire Service, did the briefings, Ray Thompson, Wayne McAndrew, Steve Ring and Jonathan Edgecombe, Lithgow City Council, and also Lewis Benzine. On behalf of Council, I wish also to recognise the following for their support and assistance to our Lithgow community during the continuing emergency. The Lithgow Workmen's Club and its Senior Executive, Mr Jeff Wheeler. The Workers Club was instrumental in providing a secure evacuation premise and support for those of our community members who needed support during the ongoing emergency. Our local federal and state members, the Honourable Andrew Gee and the Honourable Minister for Roads and Transport, Paul Toole, both of whom attended the Bushfire Emergency Centre to offer assistance and ongoing support. Our State Emergency Services personnel, the Hartley Bushfire Brigade Canteen and all volunteer personnel organised by Doreen Peters. Lithgow and Lithgow West Fire and Rescue, New South Wales. Local land services that assisted in the evacuation and housing of animals. Bathurst City Council in assisting with location of animals evacuation. The Rapid Response Team in Lithgow. The Honourable Jodie McKay and the Honourable Trish Doyle, who visited Lithgow to support our community during this time. Kirkconnell Correctional Centre, which has offered personnel to assist in the recovery process. Rural Adversity Mental Health Program, RAMP. Public Works Advisory, St Vincent de Paul, Lithgow Lions Club. The Office of Emergency Services, the Australian Red Cross, Salvation Army, Disaster Recovery Chaplains Network and Anglicare. The following local government authorities who have made contact and offered assistance are also West Rock, our partner at Blacktown City Council, who are in discussions with our administration, re the provision of qualified staff throughout the recovery process. Mayor Greenhill from the Blue Mountain City Council and his administration, who are also working with Lithgow Council administration on the recovery process in both councils. Woollahra City Council, who have offered assistance. Inner West City Council has offered personnel and support to the recovery process. And Bathurst City Council, who continues to help and support wherever they are requested and without hesitation. Last but not least, on behalf of my fellow councillors and our community, let me thank our senior executive staff and all councillor employees for the extraordinary effort that I personally witnessed and which is also recognised by our local agencies, most particularly the RFS, which has conveyed this to me. Particular recognition must go to our Director of Infrastructure Services, Mr John Edcombe, who as local manager officer Limo in the council's delegated is our delegate representative that interfaces with the Blue Mountain Emergency Management Committee, providing council equipment and personnel where directed by the Liacon and RFS as they are needed. Mr Edgecombe was on call throughout the emergency and provided assistance whenever required. Council also recognises the significant effort of the executive team led by Ross Gurney, Acting General Manager, which includes Director of Water and Wastewater, Daniel Buckins, Director of People and Services, Mr Michael McGrath, and Director of Development and Environment, Mr Andrew Muir. I must say that as Mayor, I am pleased that the calibre of our Council team and the depth we have created in our organisation, giving Council confidence that the business can continue without change in the face of challenges presenting at any one time. In the context of the above, several matters can be raised for consultation with the RFS and the Bushfire Management Committee after the current emergency is over and when RFS personnel have recovered from the exhaustive requirements that they have been acting under currently. Communication. Council must ensure that media releases from the lead agency is controlled at the time of the only in control at the time are the only communications forwarded to the community to ensure accuracy and consistency of advice. Council has done this throughout the current fire emergency and will continue to post provided media releases and bulletins as requested by the relevant lead agencies to avoid confusing members of the community. During the convening of the Emergency Operations Centre, councillors themselves received situation reports until the centre closed on the 24th of December 2019. Dangerous trees. The RMS and Council are currently removing dangerous trees from roads reserves after assessment from qualified arborists. There may be additional support that can be provided to Council in this area from the State Government, and we would be grateful for RFS to support us in this area. Chitters. The matter of cold chitters smouldering within areas in the LGA have been raised with the RFS and have undertaken inspections with a view to action. Future risk mitigation, including the potential acquisition of property machinery. Lithgow City Council has none. To undertake remedial actions is to be further assessed with the RFS once the emergency is over. Erosion and slope stabilisation. Council is mindful of past bushfires emergencies in our LGA and the resultant destabilisation of slopes following degradation of trees and undergrowth. Council is currently seeking to engage qualified contractors to survey the immediate vicinity of fire-affected areas with a view to reducing any risk identification. Mapping of underground mines and exposure to coal seams. Council is to approach the Mines Subsidence Board and local contractors with a view to obtaining accurate mapping of mines in the Lithgow City and adjacent areas to reduce risk and assist RFS and other agencies in responding to future emergencies. Safety zones around houses. Council will seek approval from relevant regulatory agencies to permit local landholders to increase their zone of safety around their homes and assets to protect life and property. Mental health assistance. Council is also already discussing with the Office of Emergency Management and charitable organisations to facilitate the availability of mental health services for those affected by the recent emergencies. Ongoing contact with communities. I propose that the Deputy Mayor and myself and any other councillor wishing to attend, together with members of the Council's senior executive, continue as we have done and meet over the next few weeks with different communities within the LGA that have been affected by the recent emergency to gain and relay feedback to all agencies involving the threat response and cover effort. Evacuation routes. In consultation with the EMC, and RFS and other relevant agencies, identify designated evacuation routes for Lithgow and village communities. Recommendation. Via formal letter under the signature of the Mayor, extended Council's sincere appreciation to those persons, state agencies and local government authorities as outlined in this Mayoral Minute for the assistance and support during the recent and continuing bushfire emergency affecting our Lithgow community. at a time and date suitable to the relevant emergency services and local emergency management committee, council engage in discussion and, where appropriate, initiate actions outlined above concerning communications, dangerous tree removal, response to smouldering coal chitter, erosion and slope destabilisation, mapping of underground mines, safety zones around houses, mental health assistance, ongoing contact with communities. Acknowledge the efforts of the senior executive team and all council staff during the ongoing bushfire emergency affecting our local council. And I so put.
I'll second that.
It doesn't need a seconder. Okay. I'll just ask council if there's any, if anybody wants to make any comment.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. That was a great mayoral minute. I just wanted to bring something to your attention and perhaps ask a question as well. Reported in the Blue Mountains Gazette just recently, Blue Mountains will receive an immediate $1 million grant from the federal government. Blue Mountain City Council would be able to choose the best way to use the money to help the community recover. Funds will be drawn from the $2 billion allocated to the National Bushfire Recovery Agency. My question is, if it's possible, how soon are you able to begin having conversations regarding this type of federal funding with NUG?
General Manager.
Mr Mayor and Councillors, the $1 million funding for Lithgow City Council was deposited in our bank late Friday afternoon, and the money is now ready for expenditure. We're just waiting to see if there are any guidelines that come out from the federal government in relation to that spending.
Thank you.
Andrew.
Yes, thanks, Mayor. Look, your mayoral minute has really covered the field, and I've got to acknowledge you and thank you for that. Though I would like to acknowledge a number of people that you've already acknowledged, because I think certainly during December and that terrible day of the 21st of December, when the fire hit our community the hardest, the work and the effort by our volunteers and many others just went beyond what I think anyone expected. So I want to acknowledge, and to pick up on what you've already said, I want to acknowledge the hundreds of men and women from the various agencies, including our own council, which you've spoke about, that work tirelessly and courageously to keep the community safe. And importantly as well, Mayor, also the various volunteer groups, organisations, individuals and local businesses that provided support. And I saw that firsthand. As you recall, you and I were at the RFS headquarters and the briefing on that Saturday, the 21st, and I recall seeing some of those firefighters come back in that afternoon carrying their gear and virtually nearly falling as they were walking. They were absolutely exhausted, and coming in, of course, and being supported and helped by our fantastic volunteer staff that were providing meals, providing drinks, providing support and providing help. I also do want to acknowledge our federal member, Andrew G. If he wasn't at all of the briefings, he was certainly at the majority. He was there with you and I on that Saturday, asking questions and putting forward points of view. And I understand that he's gone to our affected areas and spoke to a lot of our affected residents. I especially want to thank the New South Wales Opposition Leader Jodie McKay and Blue Mountains MP Trish Doyle. Jodie McKay rang me on the Sunday after that terrible Saturday and asked me could she come up and view the affected areas and speak to the affected people. I said, well, of course you can. You're more than welcome. In fact, Jodie and Trish Doyle toured the affected areas, spoke to the evacuees at the Workmen's Club, spoke to some of the affected residents personally in some of the areas of Lithgow. We couldn't get, of course, to Dargan and Clarence because the road was closed. And they also attended the communications centre and spoke to those there, including firefighters and supporters. And I can't say enough about Jeff Wheeler and his magnificent staff at the Lithgow Workmen's Club. The role they played was fantastic. I remember a discussion with Jeff. He had told me he'd been there 10 days straight without a break and were having to call staff, of course that's over the Christmas period, having to call staff in to volunteer to come in over that period of time, which they did. So I can't speak highly enough of the role that the Workmen's Club played during that very difficult time and following on after that. So I applaud you for your mayoral minute. I congratulate you on the content of it. It's been very full and it's covered all the aspects. But I just wanted to make a few points about those specific people. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McAndrew. You always forget somebody. I look out into the public gallery and I see Centennials sitting up there, and they played a wonderful part too. Katie, your people played an absolute wonderful part, because I remember when Lithgow run out of water, Dean Amos and his crew got that clearance transfer system going again, and the role that Kyle Egan and Dennis Wallace played also. So convey my thanks to them. I've conveyed it many times. I made mention of it on Thursday down at the community meeting, but seeing you're sitting there and I didn't mention Centennial at the time, thank you very much. Okay, I'll put that mayoral minute. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support your mayoral minute, and I congratulate you for doing it. When Councillor Coleman and I called this extraordinary council meeting 13 days ago, we had two aims in mind, and our two very simple motions reflected this. One was to give the community an opportunity to address and inform the council of their concerns and perhaps get a therapeutic release for some of the traumas and their fears. And the community meeting held last Thursday, and I expect when standing orders are resumed and public forum is held here tonight, that will be demonstrated how important that is. The other aim was to get a report so that the recovery process could start and council could start planning for the future. And thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's also the report that comes later in the business tonight, and your mayoral minute do start that very process. Mr. Mayor, had you at any point contacted either Councillor Coleman or myself and indicated you were going to call an extraordinary meeting and issue a mayoral minute, then we would certainly withdraw our motions for that. We're not in the business of trying to usurp the council or your authority in this matter. This mayoral minute and the Acting General Manager's report, however, are the first comprehensive reports on the fire affecting the Lithgow LGA that have been affecting the Lithgow LGA since these fires started late October, 2.5 months ago. And I expect that the debriefings and further analysis will show that they could have been handled better, and we'll learn from that. But to use an Americanism, I'm not going to be a Monday morning quarterback and criticise the RFS or any of the emergency personnel involved in this crisis. On the contrary, they were people on the ground who shouldered the responsibility, and I'm in awe of their dedication and achievements. But it would be remiss of me not to mention the dearth of information coming out of the council. As a councillor, I needed reliable information from a source that I could trust, and I trusted any report coming out of the Lithgow Council, to counter rumours as I heard them. Now, I know that Jonathan Edgecombe did with his press releases and comments as much as he could, counter rumours that were false rumours that were coming out, and I congratulate him for doing that. But we needed to have information coming directly to our councillor information, to our councillor emails, and that didn't happen. Mr. Mayor, you're the leader of this council, and as the leader, I would have expected that we would have had a series of press releases issued over your name, but unfortunately that didn't happen, and I think that's an error. That we should have had the leader of our council, the leader of our community, being the person who let us know and let the community know exactly what was happening. But congratulations on your mayoral minute, and I'll certainly do that.
I'd like to reply on behalf of management.
General Manager would like to reply on behalf of management.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, certainly in relation to the information coming out from the administration, albeit by way of a mayoral minute or whatever, I reject your assertions totally, Councillor. We are under instructions from the combat agency, which is the RFS. Every release that we put out had to be vetted by them. There was so much confusion coming by way of misleading information on Facebook and other venues. It was absolutely important to have one single point of truth. I suggest that's why the Premier of New South Wales relinquished all responsibility, called a state of emergency so that the experts could do what they had to do, given that there was life and property at risk. This council is a support agency for the RFS and for the OM. The RFS takes their job very seriously, and we responded by giving them our support at the executive level. We gave them our support by our staff. Our staff were working 24/7, Lithgow and Wang depots particularly, manning roadblocks, etc. It wasn't a position where we could go and tap on the shoulder of those fighting the fires so we could report to councillors. I'm sorry, councillors, but that's not the way it works. In a state of emergency, when you've got life and property at risk, you give it to the experts. We did not send out press releases in order to enhance council's position in relation to this emergency. We sent out communication from the RFS to keep everybody informed and to alert them to any concern regarding their safety and evacuation. That's the way it will operate in the future as well, and we've had discussions this morning with the Office of the Emergency Management outlining that that is the process we'll adhere to in relation to the combat of fires, bushfires, and that is also the process that we will adhere to in relation to the recovery process, where the Office of Emergency Management is the lead agency and will be vetting communications, and our role will be to forward those communications without change and with approval from that agency as the recovery continues.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. I shall now put the mayoral minute. Those in favour?
I'd like to.
Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Mayor Thompson, I believe from what I heard and what I read and the emails currently coming from council on a regular basis from Jonathan and Ross Gurney, I think we were kept up to date in a brilliant manner. I think it was an unenviable task for our council. I think it was unprecedented conditions, drought and raging fires, and obviously there was going to be a lot of panic and people had to be a leader in their field. I think Andrew and Ross were leaders in their field in absence of you. Yes, perhaps the Mayor didn't put out a media release, but he was obviously out on the ground doing things. But as far as all the people in the audience tonight, some of them may have lost their homes. Some of them may not have done. Some of them may have had injuries. But what I can tell you, we are Australians. We are one. We came together. The communities were amazing. I've never seen the food at some of the places that I visited. The enormous amount of generosity from our communities, you all should be very, very proud. Now, perhaps some of you people weren't lucky enough to get that because you're in a different position. But I can say from the bottom of my heart, I could not believe the amount of money that people spent cooking and giving freely. So I think, you know, with the few mistakes that may have been made, it came together because we are one, we fought for each other, we looked out for each other, and the most important thing, in our whole LGA, we haven't had one death. And some of those fires, I went and saw the topography at some of the places yesterday and the day before. The topography was incredibly dangerous. I had my brother on a bulldozer and I wouldn't have even sat on it where he was. So we've got to realise that there's a lot more people on the ground doing things, in particular our firefighters, our SES, the VRA, all the volunteers and the services that are trained to do this. The Army came in and the Navy, they weren't trained, but they trained very quickly. Without them, we would have had a lot more losses, a lot more grief, and I think we need to move forward and not look where we're going and move forward so that we know the difficulties next time we experience a major, unprecedented fire in the drought that we have just undertook with not one loss of life.
Councillor Ring.
Mayor Thompson, we had a lot of discussion leading up to the preparation of the mayoral minute with the General Manager. Now, the mayoral minute's not just about looking at reconstruction. It's also laying the basis for future discussions with the RMS in relation to, the RFS, in relation to how we manage the risk to our communities in the future. This is the first time, I believe, a council, after a major fire, has decided to look at the risk of slope destabilisation around the town. Normally what happens, we have the massive fires come through, we get the massive storms, next moment we've got houses inundated with mud. This is a good report, and I think any criticism of you not giving media is uncalled for. You're at every meeting of the Emergency Management Committee. You gave out information where it was necessary. The General Manager is absolutely correct. As for rumours in the public, I was monitoring Facebook. I saw accusations against our staff. I got written responses from senior management and I posted that on Facebook. Some of those got quite a lot of coverage. Any councillor here who had heard rumours or was aware of rumours was well within their rights to ask of the administrative team questions or information and relay that information back. We're supposed to be a team. That's how teams work. And I was particularly annoyed at criticism of our mechanics. We've got 3 mechanics and 1 apprentice, I believe. They were working over 24-hour days, not only for the regular RS fleet in this community, but for every vehicle brought into this community. They deserve special mention as far as I'm concerned. We need to be moving forward, not just for recovery, but to ensure that we put in place mechanisms with the RFS and other agencies to minimise the risk to life and property in the future.
Councillor Ring. Any other councillors? I think everybody... Okay, I shall now put the Mayoral Minute. Those in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, we now move to notice of motion.
Point of order.
Yes.
The meeting we've got here calls for President apologies, declaration of interests, commemorations and announcements in public forum. And you jump straight to, and I'm not criticising this, you jump straight to the Mayoral Minute. Can I ask could I recommend you to now call for a public forum?
It's part of the recommendation. I was going to do that. It's part 1, that public forum be held so that councillors can hear firsthand. So, yes.
No, well, again, with respect, Mr Mayor, the public forum on your business paper is separate from the motions that I moved. I think we should just follow the standard order of the business and ask for public forum at this stage.
Well, the way that I look at it is the notice of motion includes public forum, so I say that we move straight to the recommendation on public forum.
In that case, Mr Mayor, I'll advise you that the notice of motion there were actually 2 notices of motions. I know that the council has amalgamated them into 1, but there were actually 2 notices of motions. One was the public forum be called, and that was done just in case that the notice of meeting practice was not followed and it wasn't on the paper, just to guarantee that it was there. And the second motion was a separate one altogether, asking for a report, and again we have that as well. So I'd recommend that you call the public forum as in the business paper. Otherwise, I'm happy to move the other one. But
well, either way, we're going to have public forum. So I say that we move straight into public forum as the notice of motion is requested.
So you want me to speak to that?
Yes, I need a mover and a seconder, yes. So you'll move it, and I presume Councillor Coleman will second it.
So what are we parting? Just move one or the whole motion?
We'll move the whole lot because we'll move from one into another. After public forum, we'll move on to item 2.
Oh, okay. Well,
and then we will vote on the whole recommendation as so. That's the recommendation that I read. The recommendation says that public forum be held that councillors can hear firsthand about the problems and concerns of Lithgow local government area residents and ratepayers arising from the current bushfire crisis. And point 2 is that a report be given by the General Manager or in his absence, the Acting General Manager or a person delegated by him detailing Lithgow City Council's response to the current bushfire. So I can see that public forum will be held either way.
yeah. Well, I'm happy to second that.
Yeah. Okay. Righto. Those in favour? Thank you. Righto. So we'll move into it. The first person to address council is Dr. Jane Aiken. Information on fire retardant in drinking water supplies testing options. Is Dr. Jane Aiken here? In her absence then, Martin Ticehurst. Support for Royal Commission into bushfires. Thank you, Mr. Ticehurst.
Thank you, Mayor and Councillors. I just wanted to put before the Council a recommendation that the Council may wish to adopt later on this evening as urgent business, and that is that Council make urgent representations to our federal member, Mr Andrew Gee, requesting that the Prime Minister Scott Morrison immediately announce a Royal Commission into the recent, current and any future bushfires occurring during the extended 1920 bushfire season. And the second point is that Council's request be considered urgent so that a Royal Commissioner can be appointed as soon as possible to ensure that the Commissioner and their Council can gain immediate hands-on knowledge and an understanding in particular of the recent Gospers Mountain bushfire impacting upon the Lithgow City Council LGA and other current and...
Excuse me, Mr Tysos, can you just hold the mic up a little bit? Thank you.
That may occur during the remaining months of the extended bushfire season. I understand the Prime Minister is indicating that he's going to Cabinet with the Royal Commission anyway, and the reason for putting this before the Council to get a recommendation is that there were many bushfires across New South Wales. This was probably one of the biggest, the longest, and if we can get a motion on the books through Mr Andrew Gee, I'm hopeful that this Commission will be able to come to Lithgow and the areas around here to look at the hands-on issues that arose right across the district in the rural areas and everything that arose from it, because not only were we impacted in Lithgow, but all the villages and towns basically got hit by the bushfires as well. So I'm looking for that. As you'd be aware, there have been multiple deaths and medical injuries, including, sadly, RFS volunteers. As Councillor Statham's indicated, we're very lucky, good fortune here that we've not lost a soul. There was major state, council and community infrastructure, including national parks, have been destroyed and or damaged across New South Wales. Many thousands of homes and outbuildings have been destroyed and or damaged across New South Wales, many without any or inadequate insurance cover. And I understand there are concerns that will be addressed, hopefully, by the Royal Commission, where a lot of people will choose not to rebuild because, or have to take out extra loans because the requirements to be now on the home will be another 20 or 30% on the cost of the house over and above the insurance. So not only the people that with no insurance, but the ones that with insurance will be lucky if they can come back into the same home on the same site because the insurance money will not cover it, all the extra requirements. The other issue is that there's been millions and millions of animals, including native animals and farm stock, that have been perished or been injured right across New South Wales. And I'm hopeful that if the Royal Commission does come to fruition quite quickly, it'd be good while the season's still going on that we can get the Commission and the Council to come and have a look at what we've got here. It's a bit pointless coming in 6 months' time in the middle of winter when the ground's starting to recover and some of the houses hopefully will be starting to be rebuilt and some of the infrastructure's been replaced. It'd be nice if we were able to get some urgency to it to get them here straight away. I do have a second one.
Well, I think while you're there, Councillor Tysos... Oh, Councillor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
My apologies, Mr Tysos.
That's the... I'll table that if any of the council wishes to do it. I have another one that I've got to do. I'm happy to vacate and come in after someone else.
Oh, you're already there. You just walk out.
This one's about 6 minutes. I'm happy to...
Oh, right up. Okay. Visit Devon. Our next speaker is Srini Vez Udevan, I think it has pronounced. Thank you.
Okay. Honourable Mayor, Honourable Councillors and fellow Lithgow residents, I just want to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we stand on today. My main point here is I think the RFS has done a wonderful job. I think they were out and about throughout, from, although I wasn't here during that time, I've been getting updates from my fellow neighbours up at Clarence, and they've been keeping me up to date with exactly what's been going on. Yes, I sadly lost our property that we had up at Clarence, 184 Clemmer Crescent. Sorry, it's a bit... Yeah, so we did lose our property, but look, I know for a fact that the RFS, neighbours, everyone was doing their part to try to protect the community. And like everyone has said before, I think it's been great that we haven't lost a life. I think that's the most important thing. And I think just for that, you know, the RFS and everyone involved should be basically commended on. I think that's something that we should all really acknowledge and say thank you. Just a little bit about myself. So I am I'm a volunteer and director for two not-for-profit organisations, which I've been part of since a young age. And I have been, our organisation has been planning along with the with various levels, councils, states and federal level to bring up things in Lithgow, bring up basically services for our community, bring up the need for essential services. And we were in the process of doing that up at Clarence. We thought that was a starting point. Sadly, we did lose that, but we feel that we're going to still rebuild. And we want to basically bring this to the attention of all of our Lithgow fellow parts here to say that, look, we're 100% committed to continuing our support. Although we might have lost our premise, we're continuing to bring up what we had there, and we have plans to take this a step further. We want to make sure that we've got a property where people in the community can be looked after, people in the community who don't have a home or who are underprivileged have a place to stay, have a place to eat, and have a place to just have some good time when they're not in the right state of mind. So we want to work along with the councils. We want to work, of course, we've been working with various levels of federal ministers on this prospect. It hasn't, I guess, come to a stage where it's been showing fruit, but we believe that now is the right time. We all know it's a disaster that we've seen here, but it's the right time that the whole community does get together, get behind one another, and really showcase what this whole community can do in the aftermath of the destruction. So I would just like to say thank you, and just a big thanks to everyone for giving me the time and opportunity for this as well.
Can I just ask, Mayor, if you, the 3 minutes is out, that if suspend standing orders for the 3 minutes not to ring?
Hi. Thank you for giving me a chance to talk again. I brought up the matters about the chitter and the underground mine. Well, I suspected a coal seam fire that might have been happening from the Hermitage mine that got recapped. I noticed today that some heavy-duty equipment came in. It wasn't applied to the site, but they walked the site, and the fireys came with a geofears and did a bit of looking around, so I kind of wandered around with them and kept an eye on it. And on one spot there, they did say there was 100 degrees still on the ground in maybe a part where it might have been a building just across from the mine entrance that maybe got chitter. It's got a lot of ash, and it was a description like you'd said the other meeting about, you know, you step in it and there's a lot of heat and you know, you could go down a bit in it. So I've noticed, I'm really thankful that it's on your communications that you're looking into it, but I did notice that you've left off the proposal to the exposed coal seam mapping. You've said about underground mapping, and you've said about looking at the chitter, but just the exposed coal seams. I'd just like to bring that up because I still feel that on the top of the ridge, a coal seam did get hit the day that it blew. I do have a video of that happening, so I feel that we've still got a potential disaster if we don't know where those existing coal seams are. I know it's kind of addressed there, but it was just missing from the recommendation. But I'd like to commend all of you for looking into this, because if these fires are going to reoccur with this seasonal change, the actual underpinning of our whole community with the old mines, subsidence that we're aware of, or flooding, I think fire is one of those things that's kind of come up the list in this whole thing, and thank you for waiting on the experts to come back to it, but we'll just really need to follow up with it. Yeah.
Look, the General Manager will respond to that.
Yep.
What we will do tonight, we will endeavour to answer the questions as they come, but if we can't answer them, we'll take them on notice and come back at a later date, okay? But the General Manager will answer your question.
Okay, thank you.
Mr Mayor, councillors, certainly since Thursday night a lot of work's been done on identifying the seam, the coal seam, and mapping it. So Mr McGrath has been successful in getting a copy of the map that shows where the coal seam goes throughout Lithgow. In addition to that, we've got a lot of heavy resources coming down from a state body called the Resources Regulator on Wednesday. And we are having a preliminary inspection tomorrow to try and identify where all the chitter sites are in the periphery of Lithgow. So to that extent, if anybody's aware of anything, we'd appreciate that feedback. We certainly have a number of venues to inspect. On Wednesday, the state body, the Resource Regulator inspectors are coming down to inspect those particular sites. We've already had the RFS go out to a number of sites to try and remediate them. As I said on Thursday, it's difficult for us because we don't have the right plant machinery. But we've also, in addition to those, put in a request to the ADF such that they might be able to come down and assist us with perhaps plant and equipment that's more applicable. All of those requests have been met with relative acceptance. So I would imagine you'll see a lot of activity commencing tomorrow. The surprising thing is the chitters has only just become an issue in this fire, when in fact you've had fires in 1997 and 2013, and from my understanding there is chitter right throughout Lithgow. We've used it under Marjorie Jackson Oval, it's been used as road base, and so I suspect it's going to become a major long-term issue for us, but we're certainly onto it now. We'll identify where the sites are and then remediate them, get rid of it.
Can I just add, I'll just add one point. When I did see the couple that were working there today, and I said, are you going to pile it like you did where the old mine entrance was? And the comment just off the cuff and nothing official, they said that if they did pile it, it would force the heat back through the coal seam. That did happen at the Hermitage mine entrance. There was a pile put on. So potentially there is still, for me, a sense that the coal seam may have caught a bit fire, and that might have been why it was popping up along Marjorie. So again, I suppose that remedial action initially must have had to happen. I don't doubt that, but there is that consequence of that action. So I know it's up to the experts. They'll do what they need to do at the time, but I noted that in my head. I thought, right, there's something to be aware of. How do you deal with those fires when they start smouldering? Like, when you do have a problem. And as you said, I think it's that intense heat. Like we said, it's a disastrous day, a catastrophic day, and the heat. And so the fire, I know from talking to other people that lived here all their life, they've never seen any, like you've said, never seen anything like it. And I suppose that's exacerbated the problem that we had from being a colonial post-industrial site. So I acknowledge that. It's just, living near it, and like many people, it's something that's heavy on your heart, and you wonder, a bit like a meerkat, what's happening now? I felt like that. So thank you very much for hearing me today.
Deborah Oakley. There's Deborah.
Hi, Deborah Oakley from Hepburn Street. I'm very nervous. I don't do this. I don't talk publicly.
Just take a deep breath and away you go.
Okay, so I'll probably talk for ages and waffle. First of all, I really, really want to thank so many people. Is it okay if I just explain what happened? We live at Hepburn Street and our house is marked as damaged. I want to explain what damaged means. It means that we can't live there. Our laundry is gone, it's in our roof, our house is, it looks like it's been invaded. So that's what damaged means. The RFS, they came, from what I can tell, it must have been a disaster there. We evacuated straight away. going back up there, you can see all their hoses have been burnt. They've had to run for their lives. What moves me the most is that after that, they came back to our place, noticed that it was fire in the ceiling, came in, broke in, fine. They put plastic over our bookcases before they put the fire out. So I just can't express just how grateful I am. The Workmen's Club have just been absolutely outstanding. It was home for two weeks. The evacuation centre was wonderful, everything. I want to thank Cass. I want to thank other councillors, Wayne McAndrew for sticking we had concerns about the coal burning across our road. Mostly everything's been, we've been really well looked after, and I'm really grateful for that. This is pretty trivial, my concerns. Adjacent properties, there's still, trees that need to be looked at. I'm worried they're going to fall on our house. I don't know who owns the properties. I don't know what condition the trees are in. And on the water thing, it's trivial. We spent weeks using our water, which I don't care, it saved most of our house. You can see where we used the water, it didn't burn. Afterwards we used water. It doesn't matter, but the 2 days is nothing. It's nothing. So, sorry, I'm very nervous. What else did I want to say? So many people I just want to thank. The workies. Pete Evans, who, I don't know if it's legal or not, but he took home our dog for us. Andrew G. I'm not an Andrew G. I'm not a national voter, but he was there for us on the day. He came into the workies, the evacuation centre. I could see my house from the club. I thought it had burnt. I asked him in desperation. He said he'd get back to me. It wasn't until, I don't know what time that was, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. He came back in for dinner and he came straight to me and said, I couldn't find out. At that time, my husband had just gone to our property and given us the news. Andrew G, I was hysterical. My daughter, 9 years old, was hysterical. Andrew G sat down with us. He calmed my daughter down. He got onto the insurance company for my partner when he turned up. I just can't thank him enough. There's just so many people. So the neighbouring properties is a big concern. I don't know who owns the neighbouring properties. I don't know who's to blame, who's what. But I suspect that the overgrowth across from our road was what started the fire. So it needs to be looked into the future. The coal that was smouldering across our road needs to be looked into. And yeah, I'm just so grateful for everything, but the neighbourhood safer places, knowing that the fire was coming, knowing where I lived, I knew we were at high risk. I did what I could to prepare. I looked up the neighbourhood safer place, and then on the website it was pretty unwelcoming, like, don't come unless you really have to. And there was a couple of days previous to that where I thought, oh, that's where I'll go. And I only found out about the workies by chance, so I went there to shelter from the smoke and the heat, and I noticed that it was an evacuation centre, and we checked it out. And the very next morning, 8:30 in the morning, that's where I ended up. So I'm pretty disappointed in the neighbourhood safer places. I had that identified, I'd looked that up, we had our fire plan, that's where we go. And in it, it's like, if you've got somewhere else to go, go there. So on the whole, things were pretty good, but that was disappointing. And I know I've got so many more people I'd like to thank, but I can't think at the moment. So, yeah. Thanks.
I really sincerely feel for your loss. I really do, and thank you for coming forward with what you've just told us.
But overall, and the community is, I just didn't realise what an absolutely fantastic, generous, caring, beautiful community we live in. How, everybody's there for us. Everybody's, we're overwhelmed with offers of help. So, yeah, thank you to the Lithgow community as well. So, thanks.
Mr Ramsey Moody.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for giving us all this opportunity to talk tonight. I gave notice of my intent to talk this morning. Whoops, pardon me, I pulled the plug. I gave notice of my intent to talk. I've done it again. It probably works better this way. Nominating water is the subject I wanted to talk on. And in the face of the enormity of the issues that we've heard here tonight, my issue is a trite one, and it really relates to the fact that it's better to be a farmer in the Bathurst area than it is in Lithgow. In Bathurst, you can get 8 kilolitres of water a week for free, whereas in Lithgow, you've got to pay for it. But as I said, in the enormity of what's happened, this is a really trite matter. But I'd grab the opportunity, if I could, to put on record, and you've referred, Mr Mayor, to much of this already, the huge support of volunteers, and we all know the RFS is exhausted, done a fabulous job. But the ones that I'd like homage to are the support people. And in particular, the rapid response team from the Brethren, which did such a fabulous job. But it's the group from Hartley, still using the old terminology, the Bushfire Brigade Canteen, the Hartley Bushfire Brigade Canteen, that's done such an extraordinary job. Literally run by 3 octogenarian or close thereto volunteers. It's been the focal point for bringing together literally hundreds of volunteers. And you've seen some extraordinary work by, well, people like, Jodie Mason from Portland. She literally took over the sandwich making exercise with an assistant, Leanne, I think, who's her administrative assistant from Portland. And around this chaos of food coming in from everywhere, because the support was so spectacular, from mothers with a couple of kids coming in, giving stuff in to Doreen Peters, who led that canteen exercise, through to businesses turning up with offers of, you name it. It was there. It was quite spectacular to watch. Now, I was a little bit involved myself, but my wife has been extensively involved, and she just tells stories that are mind-blowing of this organisation that Doreen Peters led out there in the back of Silcock Street. That woman worked for 2 months straight. Well, I think she had a few days off where the rapid response team gave her relief. But she was there every morning at 8 o'clock doing the shopping, getting that place going by 8:30 in the morning, organising the riff-raff volunteers that come in and turning them into a working militia that by mid-morning was turning out hundreds, in fact thousands of meals. So I'd like to take the opportunity just to put on record what an extraordinary job was done there. Thank you.
I was certainly witness to that, Mr Moody, and I can assure you that the volunteer ladies asked me after each briefing would I just go in and let them know, because they had relatives and good friends working in the RFS, and they just said, after you get a briefing, can you just come in and let us know exactly where we're up to. I try to do that, and your wife did a wonderful job as well, so very good. Mr Tysos, do you want to come back now?
Thank you again, Mayor and councillors. This one I wanted to speak on was the Zigzag Railway. I've got a motion tabled for the councillor that wishes to consider tonight as urgent business, and I think it should be urgent business. That council make urgent representations to our state member, Mr Paul Tild, to request that the Premier Gladys Berejiklian undertake urgent negotiations with the Zigzag Railway Co-op Limited to, on an interim basis, take lawful possession of the whole of the Heritage Railway site and properly have the legal owners of the site, which is the State Government Department of Planning and Infrastructure, undertake a full restoration of the heritage railway site, including its railway engines, carriages, railway lines, building assets, bushfire prevention work, development of a future safety program for compliance from the Independent Transport Safety Regulator, such that when all fully completed, it can be handed back to the volunteers of the Zigzag Railway Co-op Limited to resume full rail public passenger operations to promote an urgent long-term boost to tourism across Lithgow and the Blue Mountains. That's the motion that I've got. And if I can just give you some background that some people may or may not be aware, it was in June 2012, nearly 8 years ago, the then Transport Minister, surprisingly was Gladys Berejiklian, announced that the railway tourist attraction would cease passenger operations. This followed an investigation by the Independent Transport Safety Regulator, which found that the Zigzag had more than 150 safety management problems and had struggled to appropriately maintain its rolling stock. Some 15 months later, and with the operations still ceased, the Zigzag Railway was severely damaged by the then state mine fire which commenced out of the Mayoral Army base. The railway received initial on-site clean-up assistance from the Army, and nearly 4 years later, in mid-2017, it received just $772,000 in financial compensation and settlement from the Commonwealth Government. I understand that this financial compensation would have apparently been significantly higher had the Zigzag Railway been operating at the time of the state mine fire in 2013. The railway's most recent annual report and financial statements ending the 31st of March 18 quotes under the heading "Ability to continue as a going concern" that a major issue has arisen since 17th of June 12, which if not addressed will prohibit the cooperative in carrying out its operations on a going concern basis. The cooperatives have not complied fully with the requirements of the Independent Safety Regulator for providing train services. Consequently, it has been ordered to cease all train service operations effective from the 17th of June 12. The cooperative is endeavouring to comply with the requirements of the Safety Regulator. Should the cooperative fail to comply with the required conditions of the Safety Regulator within a reasonable time, it will have no choice but to either totally cease or temporarily suspend its operations. That comment is in all their financial statements basically since the state mine fire. And that's over, they ceased operations 7.5 years ago and we're still going. It may therefore not be able to realise its assets and discharge its liabilities in the normal course of business. As we all know now, the recent National Parks Gosford Mountains bushfire has once again caused severe fire damage to the Zigzag Railway, with this time online records indicating that whilst the station buildings and most of the rolling stock survived, a few already vandalised carriages, the toilet blocks, storage areas, the communications hut, signalling equipment, water and power supplies and the main office with the past 45 years of records were all destroyed in the recent bushfire. Now, given that prior to the Zigzag Railway ceasing operations in mid-12, it attracted some 60,000 tourists each year. Since its closure, our Lithgow and Blue Mountains tourism has lost over 400,000 tourists. In recent weeks, the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, has announced $2 billion in funding for those areas impacted by the season's bushfires. And only last week, our Premier and Treasurer announced an additional $1 billion over the next 2 years to rebuild bushfire-impacted communities across New South Wales. Our State Premier and Treasurer reported that this additional funding will prioritise the repair and rebuilding of vital infrastructure, including railway lines which have been damaged or destroyed by bushfires. The Premier further said the money will provide an immediate source of funding to ensure key infrastructure is restored so that communities can get back on their feet as soon as possible. And the Treasurer further said that the money will help fast-track the recovery process and will also provide an economic boost to communities doing it tough. Now, here's the reason for the motion as a matter of urgency. The same recent National Parks bushfire has also caused a significant amount of damage and destruction to the Blue Mountains electric railway network between Lithgow and Mount Victoria. This includes large sections of the communications and signalling systems and around 50 kilometres of high-voltage electrical infrastructure, including 100 timber power poles and wires and approximately 300 fire-damaged trees near the railway. Crews are working hard to fix all that up. It's going to take somewhere between 6 and 12 months. No doubt it's either John Holland or somebody have got all the skills in the area at the moment for the next 12 months. And I think it's appropriate that We need to get onto the government, get it moving straight away. We did have an extraordinary meeting 7.5 years ago to save the Zigzag Railway. This job is not for volunteers. It is not for the Zigzag Railway to replace what is there. It's owned by the government. The money is coming through funding, and I think it's appropriate that the council jump on this opportunity so that we can get someone to come in and project manage that site, get it up and running, and then they can transfer back to the volunteers to run the way they should be. Otherwise, 7.5 years, 70 years, that railway is never, ever going to return out of the volunteers of the Zigzag Railway, sadly. All the efforts that they try and do will not work unless someone comes in, like the state government, and takes it over and fixes it up and then hands it back to them. 2 bushfires, it's just not going to help. So I'd commend that recommendation to council and table on the table.
Mayor, just before we move to the next speaker, I note that Dr. Aiken is here now. She's just in the door.
Thank you. I didn't realise you was here. I'm sorry.
Good evening, Mayor and councillors and our Lithgow community. I wanted to take the opportunity to thank Lithgow City Council. I'm a small environmental scientist and soil scientist, and I recently received a referral from the council, and it was with regards to the water quality in rainfall tanks that had been in the areas of Dargan, and the property owner was interested as to, she had to do some water testing so that she could get a new tank of water. And I just wanted to, flag that it's not exactly as straightforward. Well, it is as straightforward. It is straightforward. And in the response to that, I did some research on the particular fire retardants that we used, and I'm not sure whether we've discussed it, but I wanted to say that I did send her the information that I had gleaned on that, and basically one of the fire retardants that we have been using is based on a fertiliser base. The components of it are ammonium, sulphate and phosphate. They're the major components. And if we were looking for the water quality in a drinking water tank, we have to match the test to the Australian Drinking Water Guidelines and so on and so on. She was asking me about how much it would cost, and in the end I got so upset I said, look, I'll just do it for you, just don't worry about that. But there is a cost, and what I wanted to raise to the council is that I was working on being able to advise people that I'm thinking about a test which doesn't require a 5-day turnaround to send to an analytical laboratory, that we can use methods such as test strips that we would use to identify all of those properties, and that I just wanted to note to the council that I was working on that, and that maybe we could make available to people who wanted to test their water that it's not $100 or a $200 cost to them, that we could make it cheaper. And the other fire retardant that we may have used is the foam-based fire retardant, which is a white foam. So we may have seen that on Saturday morning in some of the areas around. That's got a different test. But basically for that, the property owners need to use an activated carbon filter, which would be beneficial. That may not get out the phosphates and the fertilisers, but that would be, the recommendations are also to wash the roofs and things like that, but I just wanted to raise it to the meeting. If there's any questions?
No, but I'll get our General Manager to respond to that.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor and councillors. We today met face-to-face with the senior executives of the Office of Emergency Management at Lithgow. We raised 5 key criteria priorities for Lithgow Council: stabilisation, shitter management, tree felling, rail infrastructure in the context of the damage done between Lithgow and Mount Victoria and the Blue Mountains line, but also the fact from a business point of view it's halted coal and certainly impeded transport and tourism from Bathurst right into the city. So in relation to Mr Tyser's comments, I would very much like to consider his notice of motion and have the administration perhaps support it. Perhaps if we could come back at the end of January to that meeting for it. But the other was water quality and testing. And we're currently trying to determine where there has been retardant dropped. To our knowledge, it hasn't been dropped within the catchment, which is good news, but we seek confirmation from the Office of Emergency Management in relation to that. In relation to water quality testing for those that have been affected, the best thing that people could do for us at the moment is to give us details as to the addresses that have been affected by fire, because it may well be we can target relief such as free water testing, tanks, etc. So we're actively looking at that at the moment. It was also one other area, and that was insurance, because a lot of the people that have been adversely affected with the fire that have lost houses, etc., have to pay an insurance excess, which is quite significant in some cases. So we we suggested that the Office of Emergency Management contact the Insurance Council with a view to cancelling the requirement for any excesses for those that have insurance and have to pay those during this particular crisis. So we're certainly aware of the water quality testing. We certainly will do what we can to help those, but we just need information on the properties targeted. It is a moving feast. The first report, when the report was written for this council meeting, we were told there were only 17 houses that were actually affected by the fire, that is burnt down. The latest report is now 54. It is a moving feast as far as information is concerned, but if people are able to contact us and give us the address of where they have been affected, then we can certainly target more relief via the OEM to them.
Thank you, Mr General Manager. Trevor Evans. Is Trevor here? Mr Richard Evans.
No relation to Trevor.
No.
Not sure what he wanted to talk about. Thank you, Mr Mayor and staff and everyone in the public gallery. So I'm here tonight with my associate here, Nigel Truslove from Portland. And I'm just going to fire up the iPad so Nigel can read from it. But we just wanted to announce that the Portland community has sort of taken... We were largely unaffected by actual fire in Portland. We're like this little ring of safety. I did flag with the RFS that we had large bodies of water at the foundations that they were more than welcome to come and dip into if they needed to. But the local community in Portland has, all wanted to work together to do something to say thank you to all of the emergency services crews that worked throughout that period. And so the foundations has offered our space to put on an event, and I'll let Nigel talk about that. He's one of the main organisers.
Thank you. I hope it's not inappropriate to bring this up. The community of Portland has begun organising a local thank you day for our emergency services teams involved in protecting the wider community throughout the December fires in our region. The foundations at Portland are providing the venue for a family-focused event, including music, rides, activities, and a free barbecue to be given to emergency workers. A fun day to enjoy after all the hard work. We have made initial sponsorship requests through a number of channels and are confident we will be able to get support to the event through those. The event is planned for the 28th of March, which ties in with another event on site that weekend, the Leathercraft and Makers Festival, which gives additional programming for families that may be interested. A number of local musical acts are offered to perform and are hoped to attract headline acts in the coming weeks. At this stage, we are not necessarily asking Council for anything, rather advising Council of our intentions and request the endorsement and support of Council for the event. As we develop the event plan in coming weeks, there may be requirements for traffic management, etc., and we ask the Council to look on these favourably if and when the need arises. Begin organising a local thank you for days of our emergency services teams involved in protecting the wider community through December fires in the region. The foundations of Portland are providing the venue for a family-focused event. Have I already read that? Oh, sorry. I'm not used to this. The event is planned... Yeah, okay. A number of local... Yeah, I've done that. Oh, good one. At this stage, we are... Yep. And I got to the end. Twice.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Just on that, the Lithgow Workmen's Club is doing a fundraiser as well, and we've also got the Lakemba Mosque who is making a donation and coming up to do a barbecue. I'll just get Mr Gurney just to elaborate a little bit on that.
Through you, Mr Mayor, we still need to organise a date for that, and we'll put out some notice of that once we have that finalised.
Thank you. You want? Oh. That's the end of everybody that's registered. Is there anybody else that wants to speak about the fire? The lady up the back.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks for giving us a chance to speak, even though we didn't know we had to put our name down to do so. I'm sure I'm not the only one here that was unaware of that. No.
Yeah. If you could just give me your name and where you're from, thank you.
Catherine McNamara from Clarence.
Thank you.
There's been some very generous money given to bushfire recovery. I'm just wondering how we as residents actually access that. As a person who had insurance, who's not considered low income, who's not a primary producer, I don't qualify for any of the grants that are on the website. But I do have a massive amount of burnt trees on my property that are dangerous and need to come down. It's a 7-acre property and most of it is burnt except for the house, fortunately. I did speak to Andrew G after the meeting last week. Very valuable meeting that you guys put on last week, thank you. I'm going to look into getting the ADF up to Clarence and Darwin to help. And his office today said that that has been put through to the Minister of Defence. Council today to try and organise permission from Council for that to happen. Have you got any news on that for us?
The General Manager will answer that.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, Ms McNamara, that's correct. So the ADF have tasked 4 items for Lithgow. One of those includes Clarence and Dargan, which relates to private property clearing. Now, they haven't given approval that. They don't need our approval. We're happy for them to do it. It's just a matter of them agreeing that they can go from public property to private property. The indications are that they'll do that. Yours is the second request we've had from the Dargan Clarence area, where I think there's about 5 acres of dangerous trees, and our hope is that they'll come in and assist with that. It may well be that council has to help because we're just not quite sure whether they're just going to go in and fell the trees or whether they cart them away or whatever. But one would hope that they bring a very big bulldozer and just go through the lot.
And a chipper.
And a chipper. Yes, thank you.
Is it possible too, I feel like getting the ADF in and then cutting out our local street sellers and instead of supporting our local people, is there some way we can...
In response to that question, we already have the vast majority of all of our local tree fell companies engaged to do chipping on our public roads. They'll be starting Walgan Gap soon. They've done Fields Road, etc. So there is absolutely no shortage of work for our local contractors, I can assure you. So that's why we're requesting ADF assistance, is supplementary to the work that we're already giving our local companies to assist private residents as such at greatly reduced or no cost.
Could you give me your name and where you're from? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor and Councillors. My name is Doug Coates. I'm a long-time resident and landowner of Walgan Valley. You've heard of it, it's in here a couple of times. But I'd just like to thank you for this meeting. I didn't know we had to book book time either. A little bit hard to get communication when you've got no power, so you've got no phone, so you've got no Wi-Fi, and the road is blocked. And that's been our case for about 6 weeks because we watched that storm come over in October and saw the lightning and have virtually not been able to do a lot since. I'd just like to bring to your attention, Mr Mayor, the fact that on Saturday the 21st of September, I'm reading the notes here, extremely destructive fires struck Lithgow, Clarence, Dargan, destroying homes and many buildings. Where's Walgan? We were fire from one end to the other. No help, one fire engine down there, nobody could get in or out. This is typical, I'm afraid, of Walgan, just doesn't seem to quite often exist. If any of the members the councillors want to come down with one of the meetings here, I'm quite happy to draw a map and show you where it is. Yes, you've cleaned the gap up a little bit, and it's hard to get in there. We've actually walked up what they call the donkey steps, which is another alternative route to make sure that we had a way out. We're really worried what may happen when it rains, because that gap may well go, or we'll need a lot more maintenance than it traditionally gets. And I think a lot of planning has to go into what's going to happen about that. My property was burnt out. But because we were well prepared, as were our neighbours, and we were communicating on UHF, we survived. And it was one hell of a firestorm, and I've been down there for a long while, and there have been some butte fires. But this one came at our place from 3 directions. But we survived on our own. But we wouldn't mind a little bit of help. I can't get round my property for trees that are still crashing down, just not game to. So thank you for this meeting. We'd love to have a meeting. We'd love to show you the road that almost stopped the fireys getting past the end of the tar because it was so, excuse the French, bloody rough and ungraded. And the fire brigade fellows were complaining about it. And they're the local Wang blokes at Lithgow who are used to it. So please give us a little bit of attention. It's the most beautiful valley. It's a bigger asset to Lithgow than I think most of the councillors appreciate. It has one of the world-class hotel resorts right alongside. It gets thousands of tourists every year who come from Sydney. It's only 2 hours away. 2 or 3 of the schools have spent a lot of money in their training programs down there, but we just seem to be forgotten every time. Thank you.
I'll just get Mr Edgecombe to reply to that.
Through you, Mayor Thompson, I think I speak for us all when I say that we're definitely aware of the importance of the Walgan Valley and the benefits that it offers the region. I can assure you that we had staff 24/7 manning closures and doing what we could to retain access, even if it was on a rotating schedule with escorts into and out of the valley. And we are also aware of the hazards that a bushfire can present to rock faces and embankments, particularly those in the Wolgan Valley, where we have crystal prisms mounted into all of the rock faces so that we can monitor movement on a yearly basis, and we do have those checks completed. We're in the process of trying to get some geotechnical engineers out, the same geotechnical engineers that do our risk assessments on a yearly basis, so that they can assess to what extent the gap has moved, if at all, and give us a factor of safety with regard to any future rockfalls. In addition to that, we're in the process of getting specialised contractors that actually do work for Sydney Trains on some of their embankments as well, to do some tree removals and rock dropping on a smaller scale to remove that immediate that debris that's of an immediate concern, and also do some clearing of the roadway. And lastly, as the General Manager mentioned previously, we've made some requests, 4 requests currently of the Australian Defence Force, and one of those is specifically with regard to Wolgan Road and the area of Wolgan Road past that concrete, what used to be the concrete causeway is now a bridge, so that we can do some tree removals in the area and further improve the thoroughfare. So long story short, we are very aware that there are some access issues. We're aware also that it is currently open. While it may be single lane in some areas, it is currently open, but we have been doing everything in our power to make sure that the road is safe in the immediate term and both in the long term as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm sorry I didn't know I had to register either. Councillors, my name is Jeff Wellsman. I'm from Portland. I live up in Ridge Street, opposite the Common. I'm here on behalf of just a few people who are a bit concerned about a few things that might not be taking place and are taking place. And they're really just a series of questions. The first one I would like to ask is, who is responsible for the Common? Is it the state government? Is it the federal government? Is it you? Or is it a committee? No one seems to be quite sure who is in control of that and who we go to and see. The second thing I've got is there are a lot of trees came down in the enormous wind gust we had at the beginning of last year, which lit a middle section of the Common and also on the fire trail. And we're wondering who is responsible to remove that and who is allowed to go in and remove it. The third thing is, one of the complaints I often get just from my local neighbours is water pressure. We really don't have much. Most of us can pee much further than we can get water out of our hoses or taps within the house. And we're concerned that if a fire breaks out there, whether there's going to be enough water pressure to combat any fire within the Common. I realise that the fire engines have water pressure in them and can force the water out, but we are very concerned with the lack of water pressure. And fourthly, we've had a series of fires lit in the Common by somebody or some groups of people, and that is concerning us. And we have an now I have to be careful here, don't I? Because it's published everywhere. It is alleged that fires have been deliberately set, and it is alleged that some of the people are known but can't be proved. We've had the police up our street asking us questions. We've also had forensic in there looking at where some of the fires have started. So they're just a few of the questions and comments I'd like to make. We are concerned that something might happen there, and the most important thing is whether we've got enough water and the pressure in the water system through that area to fight the fires, because we certainly don't have it inside to do our washing up. Thank you.
Look, we'll endeavour to answer some of the questions. Some we may have to take on notice.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll do the best I can. You're correct, we'll have to take some on notice. My understanding, if I am correct, is that Portland Common is a Crown reserve, and that its Crown auspice in this regard is by the State of New South Wales, but it's managed by it's like a reserve trust, I think, which manages that. So that's probably all the information I can give on that.
With regards to the water pressure issue that you explained there, I'll take that on notice. We can certainly go up and test, and we can get back to you with that and any results.
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh, there's quite a few. Over there.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Benson and I live in Clarence. Like my fellow Clarence neighbour, we have insurance for our home, but we seem to have fallen through the cracks where our house didn't burn down, but we have heaps of dangerous trees on our property as well. We need assistance with clearing those trees. And it's not all trees, it's just dangerous trees that are near our home, on fence lines, on sheds, that sort of thing. So I'd support what she's suggesting about getting additional help to clear those trees away. My neighbour is in the same position as well.
Could we just get your address, thank you?
Yes, it's... I almost forgot. It's 677 Chifley Road.
Thank you.
But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Could I please say something, Mayor Thompson? I do know that Paul Toole, our local member, announced at the meeting on Thursday afternoon that any trees that needed to be taken down, that there is a funder now available for the state government to demolish those trees.
That's handy to know.
If you contact Paul Toole's office in Bathurst, they will give you the information.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, my name's Dennis Plink. I live at Hartley Vale. We had a very interesting 21st of December as well. We're on a couple of 100 acres and we managed to save the house. My wife, our son and I with a hose each. Hit amongst a horrific firestorm, and my heart goes out to everybody that experienced anything similar. We came into the council downstairs today just to inquire about what the situation is with trying to... when you go through this, it focuses your mind wonderfully on what it is that you need to do to try to avoid things being as dangerous in the future. And one of the obvious things, as much as I'm a tree-hugging greenie, is that you can't have this stuff too close to your home. So I went downstairs and said, so what's the deal? What am I allowed to do? And I think we're in some environmental biodiversity kind of area up under Mount York there. And I was advised that we could clear trees back 10 metres from a building, and then we could clear undergrowth back 50 metres. From what I could see from just what the fire did on the 21st, 10 metres, I think trees grow taller than 10 metres. I looked at the first most obvious thing that needs to be done is that, in all reasonableness, we should be able to remove trees that are, say, 1.5 tree heights from the building. So when those trees crash, as they, like thousands of trees on our property have crashed, when they crash, they're not going to hit the building because then it's just all over at that point, obviously. So I just think this is an absurd rule, and I guess it's not council, I guess it's state government. But maybe you can put forward some sort of, representation that, I mean, that just defies common sense that you're forced to keep a tree at the distance that it's an existential threat to your home. And maybe it depends. I don't know. If it's in your neighbour's yard, if you're in the suburbs, then maybe it's different. But in our situation, we own 500 metres in every direction from the house. We protect everything. We allow regrowth. We love the bush. You know, that's what we're all about. But it was just so obvious that it was life-threatening to allow these trees. And then also, I used to be a builder, and I was forced by councils before to thin trees out. Like the trees that we are by those rules being forced to keep at the moment, if you were to build in that position now, you'd be forced to remove, because they'd say, okay, you can't have continuous canopy for so many metres out, and it just seems so inadequate that if you literally have to leave everything except what's 10 metres from your home, you're just a sitting duck. So I don't know what the council can do to help with that, but you know, it'd be great if we could have some representation, and I guess the mood's going to be for that. And you know, I don't want bulldozers to come through the whole country either. But you know, we need to be able to keep yourself safe, I think.
Yeah, well spoken. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes, in the yellow.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I live in Macaulay Street. I'm going back to the 2013 fires.
Your name?
Darren Field.
Thanks, Darren.
Me and my partner were inundated with water after the 2013 fire. We had a flood which came off the mountain and flooded our property and other neighbouring properties. We've had a fight with our insurance company since then, and we've had no help. We've had to rebuild our home at our own cost. We've had a lot of mould from the flooding. The most annoying part about the whole thing is at the same time, after the flood, I had a spinal injury and I had to go off work. And being off work, you don't get support like you think you would. And it's cost me a fair bit of money to replace things and, you know, redo the house at my own cost, and sickness as well from the mould. There's been a known history of this happening from the type of guttering in the street, not enough drainage in the street, and the fact that I've actually had to write a letter to put into the Royal Commission through the banking inquiry, because the bank would not help us with the insurance side of things. Which is pretty gut-wrenching when you pay your way. And one other thing I'd like to bring up with this recent fire in December is that I was working in the 2013, before the fire, at Zigzag Railway on the last 3 days before it burnt down. I got to meet some great people and got volunteers that worked there, and to see the loss in the town, in the community, and tourism, I noticed the changes straight away. Even though I wasn't born here, but I lived in the mountains most of my life in Lura Katoomba before I came here, and always used to come up all the time as a child, right the way through, because I have an enjoyment of trains. But to see through it go another loss, it's quite devastating. I've done a lot of volunteer work myself, not with the Zigzag Railway, but other railway things. And, you know, it's a devastating thing for everyone, especially business, and keeping community together. Just one other thing I'd like to bring up also about this whole thing is with the fire recently, we had some flare-ups and spot fires we had to fight in our street, and we used a fair bit of water, up to about 4,000 litres. We're just wondering if there's any rebate or exclusion for the water usage for that time period.
I'll just get the General Manager to answer that.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, yes, we're considering rebates, not just for that period, the 20th and 21st of December, but through the period, the prolonged period involving all the villages during the fire emergency in the LGA. So, Mr Mayor, the other thing is in relation to the slips and erosion that came down onto Macaulay Street and past. We had 4 priority requests to the ADF, and one of them was, which has been tasked to them, is an engineering assessment of slope stability and loose rock and debris removal from the area. Now that's in relation to both Walgan and also the peripherals of Lithgow. So we're moving on that at this point.
No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'm aware that they in the white. Yeah, thank you. Or yellow, lemon.
My name is James Hackney. We are property owners in Nightingale Road. We back up to the Gardens of Stones off Crown Station Road. We have a 54 hectare property which was pristine timber property. We've been actively involved in the Region Honey Eater Recovery Program, tree planting, land care, hotspots programs. We've owned it for 19 years, and on the 9th of this month we had 3 bulldozers clear a 30 metre wide track for 750 metres across our property as a fire break, and if all hell broke loose they were going to set fire to it, which would have burnt down our house. Now, under the State Emergency Act, I cannot stop it. There's a $5,500 fine and 2 years in jail. Now, I've got photos here which I'm happy to give to the council. I also pointed out that where they bulldozed all this was a heritage trail called the Halfway Hollow Trail, which traverses us, and it also connects with the Red Rock fire trails. That is totally unusable at this point in time because of the bulldozering. I notified Fire Control Lithgow on Sunday of this fact. Now, the only access to those fire trails is on my private road now, which we had negotiated with Parks as a maintenance road. They maintained it, they built it, but all of the RFS fire maps show the fire trail across through Halfway Hollow Trail. Just absolutely disgraceful.
I'm not aware of that. I'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
Up the back there.
Sorry, me again, Deb Oakley. Just while we were while I was listening, the water pressure issue was a big concern for us leading up to the fires. Living at the top of Hepburn Street, look, my mind's blank as to dates and whatever, but we knew the fire was coming. There was one day where the water flow was so low that it wouldn't refill our toilet system. It was fixed, but in future, can we not do work on the water mains just in fire season, please? And also another question. I have a really, really big tree that didn't get burnt. It's right on the edge of our house. I'm just wondering if anybody knows how we can go about getting some assistance. It's a fire hazard, even though it didn't burn this time. I can't afford to do it ourselves. If anybody can offer any help with that. Yeah?
Look, the General Manager will answer the water problem for a start.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Ms Oakley, Council didn't do any work on the water system. What actually happened on the day was that the fire burned through the main pipeline from Clarence.
The fire.
And before the fire?
Before the fire.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll need to check that out.
It was in the lead up when we were trying to prepare our property, and you'd done the work on, you know, where all the potholes are near the club.
Yes, okay, Bridge Street.
But every time something gets done there, and it echoes on to all the different ones, and we had no water pressure. It got fixed, but it was very nerve-wracking knowing that this fire's coming and we can't water our roof.
Well, we'll take that on notice. It's always very difficult to get the balance between repairing water pipelines and working out what's going to happen in the future, but we can certainly do that.
But yeah, that fire was pretty obviously coming. Thanks. And the tree? Does anyone know anything?
As far as the tree is concerned, look, we have a number of inquiries from people, private property within Lithgow, regarding different trees. Some of them were alight right in the middle of the town through ember attack, etc. So to the extent if you might need advice or help, just contact either myself or Mr Edgecombe and we'll arrange for somebody to come out and give you assistance.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, any others? Mrs Groves.
Thank you, Mayor. Sue Graves. Thank you for your report, your mayoral report. It's an excellent overview in a sense of not just what's happening but the people involved. We know, we're all aware that what we've experienced in Lithgow and surrounds have been catastrophic, and the people who have worked so hard to save property have been extended, you know, beyond all reasonable belief that this could be happening. So my personal belief is that hundreds of homes on the escarpment of Lithgow could have been lost, but for the huge work of many people, including the RFS, volunteers, homeowners. Mayor, what I'd like to ask you about is on page 2 of your report, there's just, with respect, there's just an error of admission, and the Uniting Church has been involved in disaster recovery chaplaincy, and we've had 4 chaplains working here since the fires have started and people have been evacuated. I'm just wondering, respectfully, if you could include that in your mayoral report.
Certainly, Mrs Groves, and I apologise.
No apologies, it's just a submission. Thank you.
It could be, I don't know. Okay. So right up the back there.
People are saying is very much the point, the big legacy. ADF has got a limited amount of capacity to actually remove those. Creating asset protection zones. And at the end is those sort of things are very cost effective, and I think what the actually allow for people not to have this cost. I could ask the group have to take Emma School and ECG that they look at.
one more right. They were.
Endeavour Energy, just so grateful to them. But we still don't have a phone. And given that we have very limited mobile reception, my only communication with the outside world at the moment is if I stand on one foot. In the middle of my driveway, I can get 2 bars of reception, which is great. I'd really love my house phone back, and I can't even get onto them to find out what the problem is. I did excitedly pick up the landline to no avail.
Look, sometimes Telstra's like that in good times, let alone in bad times. Look, I've got to concur with you. Endeavour Energy were absolutely fantastic. Kelly Hamilton kept everybody up to date with how many homes were without power, how quickly they were getting back on power. They were using generators, you know, to get low voltage up to Clarence and Darkin. Absolutely fantastic, Endeavour Energy, I've got to say. And even now they've got trucks up there everywhere, with cherry pickers on them, you know, working on the poles. So you were dead right. Endeavour Energy were fantastic. I think that just about exhausts public gallery, so we'll move on to where are we? Went to the report.
Mayor, I'll move the recommendation.
Yep. Move the recommendation. Have we got a seconder?
Yes, we've got a seconder.
Yep.
Yes, Mayor, in moving the recommendation, I want to add two extra recommendations at point 7 and point 8 and slightly change recommendation 3. I'll read out the recommendation 7 to add to the current recommendations 1 through to 6, that a briefing meeting be organised as soon as appropriate involving all councillors, the General Manager and appropriate council staff with representatives from the various local agencies involved to discuss in detail the management of and outcomes of our recent local government area fires. And number 8, which is self-explanatory, that the General Manager enact the following current Council Resolution 15-330 adopted at the 14th of December 2015 Council meeting, and I quote, establish a relief fund to attract public donations for the support of the community during declared natural disasters only, and as each event occurs, seek deductible gift recipient status for the fund from the Australian Taxation Office. In speaking to number 8, it doesn't need any more explanation. That's a current resolution of Council. It's still a binding current resolution of Council, and as the report clearly outlines, not only was declared a natural disaster once, but 3 times, impacting on our community. Before I go into speaking in more detail about my reasons behind 7, I want to also slightly change recommendation 3. And I want to change it along these lines: authorise a rebate for water usage charges cross out on the weekend of 21st, 22nd December 2019 and replace with during the bushfire crisis. The reasons I say that, aside from picking up the points made by Mrs Oakley, there were other dates. There was preparation. I'm well aware of preparation that was performed by residents leading up to the 21st and the 22nd, and there will be clean-up. There will be clean-up costs using water. There will be clean-up in a lot of our fire-affected areas, and I know that some of our residents that had pools used a lot of their pool water, which of course will need to be replenished. So it wasn't just, although the 21st and 22nd December were the killer days, it wasn't just those 2 days that that people had to effectively use excessive water to protect their properties. Coming to recommendation 7, I specifically put in the recommendation that a meeting be organised as soon as appropriate, because I'm well aware, after speaking to fireys on the ground and others, is unless we have significant drenching rain across all of our local government area, we're not out of the woods yet. So there could be, I hope not, but there could be further events. So it may be just too early for a proper briefing from those agencies that will still be involved in looking after property and life as we move forward into our hot summer. What's equally important is that, and this is an important point, all fires impacting on our local government area emanated from national parks. The Gospers Wallamai National Park fire is the largest single fire in the history of our country. I understand now it's under control, but there was some indications that there were some flare-ups in recent media reports, but let's hope it is under control. The reason I think the meeting is important to involve all councillors, general manager, appropriate council staff and all those various local agencies, because it will give an opportunity for councillors, there's 9 of us, that represent our community right across our local government area. The questions that have been put to me in my driving around and looking at the fire-affected areas and talking to our affected residents, some of the issues put to me, and I come back to that point I made earlier about all fires impacting on LGA emanating from national parks, is the management of those parks. And I'm absolutely horrified and devastated to understand what the loss of wildlife has been, let alone the impact on homes and property and the like. If some of the figures that are being quoted now, we've lost wildlife, some species may be forever. So the management of national parks needs to be looked at. Appropriate width buffer zones within the boundary of forests and national parks, taking your point, not on your land, but within the boundaries of those parks and those forests. Especially near our towns, villages and farming and agricultural lands. As far as I'm concerned, that's one of the major issues now. Not only the management of our parks, but also protecting other areas from those potential park fires. Hazard reduction levels. You know, I'm no firefighter, never have been, but I've spoken to a lot over these last few months, and they're saying to me that it's the most growth and fuel on the ground they've ever seen in their time fighting fires, ever. And I take their word for that, and I'm not going to challenge or argue that. Some of the issues raised here tonight, trees too close to or hanging over roadways, trees clearing around homes, they're all relevant. I went up, even again yesterday, to refresh my memory of Clarence and Dargan and gone through and see where we hit especially hard. Road and highway closure processes, you know, some have raised those issues with me, early fire warning process, and I understand at the public meeting, aerial water bombarding capabilities as a question was there. That's the opportunity for councillors in a briefing session with staff and with the relevant agencies to have those open and discussions and raise those questions. The Walgan issue can be raised as well. And look, these are just some of the issues of questions put to me. I expect other councillors will have more. They're just some that have been put to me. Look, I'm not going to speak to the report unless parts of it are questioned. I honestly think the report is thorough and it's comprehensive, and I congratulate our staff for putting it all together. Look, that time, especially that 21st of December, I saw the 97 fire, I saw the 2013 fire, and I saw this one. I know residents that fought the 1997, the 2013 and this one, and those residents and saying to me this is the worst they've seen. So it was a fairly tense, a fairly abnormal time. Like I said, it was something that certainly I haven't seen in my time in relation to bushfires here, and as I understand those that matter on the ground, the firefighters are certainly saying the same thing. Just in relation to give an idea of the extent and what occurred, I note within the report, and I go to page 7, where it talks about the impacts, fatalities thankfully nil, but homes and outbuildings. I know the original report we got was 17 homes destroyed, 8 damaged, 30 outbuildings, 37 destroyed, 12 damaged. But the latest report we got on the 30th, I think on the 30th of the 12th, if my memory serves me right, which was sent to all councillors, that was talking about 54 homes destroyed and 22 damaged, and outbuildings 117 destroyed and 59 damaged. Now, whether I know we're still trying to drill down on the exact losses. I think I said in response to this email that was sent to all councillors that maybe the numbers have increased where there's been insurance assessments of homes, and they've been assessed where we thought the home was okay, but it's been assessed that it can't be rebuilt and it's got to be knocked down for any number of reasons. That may be the reasons why some of the numbers have increased. But I simply raise it to give a further example of the extent and the damage that this fire has impacted on our local government area. And I say once again, it's just I just think we've been so fortunate that we didn't have any loss of life. So, Mayor, I just want to congratulate the staff on the report. I think it's very thorough and I think it's very comprehensive.
Councillor Ring, are you happy to accept those changes?
More than happy to accept the amendments.
You want to speak to that?
Yes. I'm more than happy with the amendments that have been put up. I think they're sensible and reasonable. I'd like to thank Mr Gurney for the report that he did. It is comprehensive and it does put out there what our council staff did during this emergency. And in talking to the Mayor and going to the emergency centre, I know that the RFS and police believe that council staff and council went above and beyond what was asked of them. And I believe it's really appropriate that the community is aware of what our staff were doing. Mr Gurney, he should be congratulated because he does not stress. Man's got ice in his veins, probably because he's a financial person, but he definitely was a good person to have running the council at that stage. No offence, Graham. But he did not stress at all. He took everything in his stride. If he could not answer, he got back to me, got back to the Mayor. He was a credit to our council. Basically, I think Councillor McAndrew has said it all. We've done well as a council. We are very bloody lucky to not have lost more houses. If we'd had stronger winds, we could have lost a lot more. We could have lost lives. And we shouldn't just be questioning national parks on how they're managing their reserves. I read our fire management plan for the LGA. I thought it was around 40%. It's nearly 50% of our LGA, which is forest and national parks. Yeah, there's been discussion of forests being sold off by the state government. Well, that's not going to help us because whether or not they've been cutting staff, I don't know. They don't pay rates. They weren't prepared to pay rates. But we need to be talking to these people. We need to look at the legislative basis for fire management committees so that we have more teeth and that we can demand for better information on what these agencies are doing within our community. They need to be held accountable.
Thank you, Councillor Ring. Councillor Coleman.
I'd like to add a point 9, if I may, and I'd like to change point 2, I think. Yeah, if the mover and second are agreeable. Well, I'll explain what I want to do first. So point 2, it says authorise domestic waste charges relief for properties where dwellings have been destroyed. I think I'd like to consider. I would like us to consider that to say authorise domestic waste charges relief for properties where dwellings have been fire affected. there's a lot of properties that weren't actually destroyed, but actually have been damaged. And in the report, and I read the report as well, and congratulations, Mr. Gurney. I do have other questions in regards to the report that I would like to ask. But I think that should be changed in that sense, because even though the properties weren't destroyed, there is a lot of damage, as Mrs. Oakley, Deborah, if I can call you that, has explained. That's my first one.
I'm happy to accept that first change. I'll listen to the next one.
The second point that I'd like to bring up is I would like council, in the future, to hold a bushfire information expo. Once we've done our briefings and all that sort of stuff, I think as a community, this will be an opportunity to, heal. I like us to consider hosting a bushfire expo so that we can, as a community, work towards bushfire safety, preparation and awareness. This could include information sessions on updates to planning for bushfire protection, industry expos with leading suppliers of bushfire equipment and building solutions, and expert panel sessions with Q&A, local New South Wales Rural Fire Service bushfire specialists to speak and learn from, an understanding of traditional Indigenous fire management known as cool and quick burning. I think more knowledge and understanding, the better prepared for the future we'll become. So in the future, as part of our recovery process, I think we should look at a bushfire expo. It has been done in the Blue Mountains and it has been actually quite successful. So if the mover and the seconder are happy with that.
Could I... Look, I'm very comfortable with the thrust of it, but I'm just not so sure it should be in this report. And I'd be happy for it to come at a future meeting as a notice of motion. The reason I say so is that it is something for the future. The notice of motion was quite clear. The public forum be held. That's occurred. And then 2, that a report be given by the General Manager, or in his absence the Acting General Manager or a person delegated by him, detailing Lithgow City Council's response to the current bushfire crisis. And I think those items 1 through to 9 do that, and certainly with that change to number 2 equally does that. I'd be happy for Councillor Coleman, if she wishes to bring it to a future meeting as a notice of motion, which will have my support.
Yes,
if Councillor Coleman wishes to move that as amendment, I'd be happy to second it.
Yeah, well, I'm even happy to foreshadow that as an emotion here and now. I mean, we're talking about it here and now, Councillor McAndrew. Why not deal with it?
I just feel that if we go down that line, we might be compromising the RFS themselves. And I certainly don't want to do that.
Well, I don't want to do that either. And I would like them involved, part of the, they need to be involved and be part of it. But I think this is moving forward. This will help with our recovery and healing process and have an understanding.
Mayor Thompson, if I may, Andrew, I believe it's not consistent with the thrust of this report. I believe if Councillor Coleman brings it back to the next meeting, that'd be fine. It'd also give her an opportunity to talk to the RFS, because they do have statutory roles. They do a lot of work in the community. I think she really needs to work with them so we can get this down right.
That's fine. I will do that. I'm happy to bring it to the next meeting.
Thanks, Councillor Coleman.
If I may, I still have questions though that I'd like to put forward. I understand that these may need to be taken on notice. Is there a tight time frame in claiming against Section 44 of the Rural Fires Act? What plan does Council have in place for putting in a claim against Council 5 at affected assets across the local government area? That's my first question. What future and timetable plans are in place regarding the Clarence Community Centre that burnt down? I don't think that's been brought to anybody's attention, so I'd like to bring that to your attention. Do we have a bushland management officer? Are we able to provide a full list of bushland reserve that the council owns and manages, or is the trustee of? Do we have a bushfire management plan? What is the plan moving forward to work across council reserve with local property owners? I think that was actually answered, but I still want them to come back anyway in a report if I could. What is the plan moving forward to work across council reserves with local property owners? I think that was answered as well. Was there any consideration at the time of closing of Hassans Walls Reserve, which has 600 hectares? Was there any concern with that during the time? What plans are in place, and this was brought to my attention by people in Hartley, what plans are in place regarding locals in Hartley receiving local communications? I was told that they cannot access local TV or radio. Is that true?
I think so, but we'll have to take all these questions on notice.
I'm happy for it all to come back because it's important. I was told that there was a tower owned by council that remains switched off. Is that the case? I don't know. I just need that to come back. I have another question here. Why weren't councillors provided with regular incident reports through either the local emergency management officer or acting general manager, and can that be looked at in the future?
They were.
They were? Yeah, good. I didn't get any either.
They were sent out to all councillors. Incident reports were sent out to all councillors by the Limo.
Okay. In regards to the visit that the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor and Councillor McAndrew went to, you went to briefings. Why was that not extended to the rest of us? Why were not included? Why were not other councillors included in that as well?
When we went up to Clarence Dargan?
Yeah, why weren't we not included? Why was it just limited to the three of you?
Because we were the three that was at the meetings day in and day out at the RFS, and so we went up wholly and solely to see. Most of the roads were closed anyway. We couldn't get in. We couldn't get into the roads, but that was the reason why those three councillors went.
But we weren't invited, so why was that?
No, I need a clarification of that, please.
I wasn't invited. I wanted to know.
I understood every councillor was
we
invited. I checked my email and had all councillors. All councillors.
All I know, it was a mayor's invitation to go up to Clarence, but I don't know whether I included all councillors.
You did. That's why I'm asking the question. Why were we not all included in that?
If I've made a mistake there, I apologise.
No, Mayor, you haven't. I'll go back and find the email if I have to, but all councillors were invited to that trip to Clarence Dargan to view the affected properties, because I even questioned with Ross the 10:30 time, whether it was to be at Clarence at 10:30 or be at the council chambers at 10:30, and I'm sure I saw other councillors involved in that request.
Mr Mayor, that's perfectly true.
Yes.
Councillors were invited to the Clarence inspection, that's perfectly true. But councillors, however, were not invited to the RFS meetings.
No, I was. That's the one I'm talking about. Why weren't we included in the RFS meetings, the briefings? Why weren't we not included in those?
Sorry, nobody was included in the RFS meetings. Nobody.
Was that just yourself and the Deputy Mayor?
Beg your pardon?
Was that just yourself and McAndrew?
No, Councillor McAndrew had nothing to do with the RFS meetings. He went up there as an observer.
On my own bat.
On his own bat.
Right. So you were just, you and Councillor Ring as the Deputy Mayor just went?
Look, Councillor Ring wasn't there either first up.
Oh, okay.
I went as the council's representative as mayor in case that I had to do some media release. But when I got there, I found out that it was better for the people in control to do the media releases so as the exact information was getting out to the public. So the only reason that Councillor McAndrew was there, he walked in with me as an observer. Councillor Ring came the next day as an observer. Exactly.
So we could have all gone if we'd known?
Of course you could have.
Yes.
Of course you could have.
Well, I didn't know, so if I'd known, I would have gone.
Well, most probably you would have, but I'm just saying that's the reason why. I was the only one that went up there, and I went up there on my own behalf as well, because our representative from council is sitting here beside me. He was the one making the decision for council.
Jonathan was.
Exactly.
Right. Regarding the establishment of the local land services opening at Large Animal Exploration Centre in Bathurst, it was first here in Lithgow, then it was decided to go to Bathurst?
No.
No? What happened?
The larger animals was always going to Bathurst, and the smaller animals was here in Lithgow.
So why was not Portland considered in that? Was it not appropriate, or?
Portland wasn't under attack.
Okay. But it could have been used.
Mr. General Manager.
The decision as to where the animals were located is not resident with council, it's with the local land services. They're the ones that make that decision. They're the ones that chose, I think, Tony Lucchetti in the first place, and then they liaised with Bathurst and informed us that they had made a change. It wasn't a council decision.
So that was
they are the responsible agency. They are the one that directing what happened in relation to those.
Mayor Thompson, may I add something to that, if I may, please? I did contact Mr Edgecombe, because he was the Emergency Management Coordinator for Council, and I'd been in discussions with Rich Evans from the foundations, and the foundations offered up their property, no feed, but it was enclosed in the event that it was needed. So Mr Edgecombe was aware that the potential was there, but as the General Manager said, the decision is not Council's. In this emergency, a lot of decisions were taken out of our hands.
What I can't understand, Councillor, is you could have got all this information before coming here tonight.
Well,
as easy as pie. All you had to do is get in contact with the General Manager. You would have got the answer to all of your questions without standing up there asking these questions.
I think these questions are important, Mayor, and this is why I'm here. I've had all these questions sent to me. It's on public record. The report will come back, so I think it's important these questions are asked, and this is my right as a councillor to ask these questions.
Okay, keep going then.
I only have one more question in regards to, I note and congratulate Council on the opening of the hydrant to fill residents' water tanks, and people had to come into Lithgow and fill up their water tanks and take it out, and we did that to protect our property. Was there an opportunity to open up a hydrant in Portland, or was it just only here in Lithgow that you could do that?
The hydrant was made available in Lithgow specifically, so we didn't have to utilise the payment method through the existing standpipe. There could have been a possibility to use the one at Portland. It was based around Manning, I believe, but I'd have to take that on notice and get back to you with a bit more
The reason I'm asking, and thank you for your answer, the reason for why I'm asking is from personal experience, cutting water can be quite expensive, and if, you know, those in Portland and Cullen and Benbullen and Kapiti had to come all the way into Lithgow to get water to protect their property, that would be an extra cartage charge for them. So that's the question. That's the reason why I'm asking that question.
I've sat here today and I've listened, and our community wants to take their hat off. This has been an outstanding effort. We could have lost 300 to 400 houses. We lost a heap of Dargan, which is terrible. It's gut-wrenching. I drove the Dargan and had a look, and then and I was out at Angus Place. My heart goes to them people of Walgan Valley. How they got out of there alive and how they're breathing today is beyond me. I work at Angus Place Colliery. I was out there fighting the fires on Saturday the 21st. That's why I couldn't go to the briefing sessions, and the Saturday before I was there. On the Thursday before, we were there underneath the choppers, and these blokes done an outstanding job, flying in and out of the power lines and saving houses and saving lives. The dozers come in, and they come up the side of the mine, and we directed them to one house down there, and thank God we did. He saved that house. But there was $1 billion coal mine there, and we were there fighting it. Because without coal, we don't have power and we don't have nothing. So I want to take my hat off to the coal mining community and this council that had the foresight 25 or 30 years ago to put in the water treatment plant that we have out of Clarence Colliery. Otherwise, our bloody town would have no water. We'd have been like Bathurst and Orange. So this council needs to get a bit of credit in relation with the coal mining community as well, because we had no water. We have an abundance amount of water. We have lakes that Energy Australia that now own have let us, the choppers come in and fight these fires. It's been a bloody hard fight for all of us. And look, some of these questions, and I agree with the Mayor, Councillor Coleman's within her rights to ask these questions, but they could have been answered the day before the sheep board of the meeting. It's not a grandstanding thing here. It's not about voting for there's an election coming up very shortly. But I know you're not grandstanding.
I'm asking questions.
You've had your turn, Councillor Coleman. Now it's mine. Now it's mine. The thing about it is, what we need to do here is get this community. We're united. We've come through this bloody thing. But what we've got to remember, we're a long way from being over. We can't have a debrief in 3 weeks' time because we're in 7 weeks in the bloody summer. So people, let's get our act together and get it behind each other as a community and realise the worst could be yet to come. If Hassan's Walls goes, or round the back of the common of Portland or out of your way, Marie, it could burn for years. We're in a long way from being able. We hope to God on Thursday and Wednesday we're supposed to get 25 to 50 mil of rain. And God, send it down, because God, we need it. So guys, let's get together and forget the debriefs till the fire's over. Let's wait till the summers and we really have the money and the equipment to back it up. Let Graham and his team get the ADF in. I take my hat off to these young blokes here. Well, some of us were all having Christmas parties. These were the blokes that were at the forefront. They were at the forefront. I'm telling you. And here we were, having a couple of schooners, but that poor bugger there, Jonathan Edgecombe and his mates, they were there 24/7. We had councillors fighting fires. Mr. Councillor Goodwin, who's not here today, he's in everything. He had 20-hour days like we all did. So, guys, let's get together and rally around each other and support each other in this time of need. It's not here to ask the super bad questions. It's about getting it right, because summer's not over. Thank you.
Mayor Thompson, through you to Jonathan Edgecombe, or perhaps the gentleman on the end. Speaking of Kramer Park, I've been notified quite a few times over the last week that a lot of people are going in there filling water pods and also the foundations. I don't know whether Mr Evans is aware of this, but it's called stealing water. So is there a card on the Kramer Park water hydrant? Does anybody know that they have to pay so much? Otherwise, I think there should be a card put there, because there's many people using that facility, and it's been brought to my attention on probably 6 or 8 occasions, and also people have been going into the foundations and filling up. Now that's Lithgow water, so that means the foundations will get quite a big bill, and obviously, you know, if it's for a fire, very different emergency, but it's for local people. We all have to pay for our water, so if it's for local people using that facility, it's pretty unfair.
In Kramer Park with that standpipe, it isn't a card access type standpipe. As to when it was put in or how it is operated, I'd have to take that on notice and get back to you with that. The new standpipes will be installed by the end of the month with the meter and card facility. So with any luck, that one will be removed and the new one will be taken its place.
Where people from Portland are coming into Lithgow and it's played up because so many people have used it,
yep,
that they're taking the 1,000-litre containers in Marie, Councillor Statham, and they're paying $5 for their 1,000 litres. They just want to know if they can get access to the one on Wang.
So the one at Wang, the contractor and the company that we've been using, we've been trying to get them back as quick as possible. They've been doing a lot of work in estate. As much as that is a problem, we're getting them back as soon as possible to come and install that, regardless of whether the others are installed or what is happening as far as the metering unit.
Is it just the metering unit?
Yeah, so it's just the card facility. The entire standpipe's ready to go. It's just the card access.
Okay, any other councillors? Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I agree with Councillor Smith. We do have a problem. And we have a problem in Lithgow, we have a problem in New South Wales, we probably have a problem in Australia. These fires aren't out. When they do get out, they'll come again in 3, 5, 7 years' time. The bushfire season every year for the last few years, every season it's just extending further. It used to start in beginning of October and then September. Now it's in August. Soon we'll have a bushfire season going from July to May. People who are thinking about, well, we need to do hazard reduction, well, you've got June to do it in. You're not going to have, you're going to have much fun. There's a lot of issues here. You have, in an emergency, liability issues. An emergency is declared, liability issues are addressed. But if you're just doing hazard reduction, and your bushfire and your hazard reduction gets away and burns someone's property down, who pays? If someone is killed because of one of these fires gets away, who goes to jail? Because you don't have the same emergency protection. I have no answer to these questions. I like Councillor Coleman's suggestion of an expo, which we are just trying to get ideas up and to get the community involved, so we know what we can do, how we can do it, and part of the expo would be discussing the DAs. Now we have here in point 4 of this recommendation that DAs waiver a fee of DAs. I like that. That's good. But are we telling them, or will there be a change in conditions for houses? If you built a house in 1980, are you going to build the same house? I wouldn't think so. Are people going to be informed of this? This is something that could have come up at a bushfire expo, explaining how conditions are going to change on people wanting to build something. How does the insurance claims deal with this? If you've got a house, a replacement insurance claim on your house, but your house costs another 30% more because you have to put all these extra requirements that will be not council requirements. I'm sure there'll be state government requirements on exactly what's having to do. The other issue that's coming up is the water. Currently the recommendation on point 2 is that these water rebates be on application. Now, I think that's unreasonable. There's people in Macaulay Street, Hepburn, these are just streets I've written down, Macaulay Street, Hepburn Street, Crane Street, Sanford Avenue, Bells Road, a whole series of streets in the Vale of Clwyd. They're not going to be interested in coming up to the council to put in their application. I think the council needs to consider seriously just declaring whole streets as such, and applying this water rebate right across the board to everybody in those streets. I'd recommend those streets as such. And there would be others, of course, outside that I don't know. I certainly went round Lithgow. I avoided going around during the fire. I didn't want to be one of those people who was gawking and rubbernecking and getting in the way of everybody else, but I quietly went round afterwards when there was no one there, just to check out these places and see what it could be doing. These people don't need the aggro and the irritation of having to put in applications. I think it just should just be applied. I think I'd like to add another. Oh, just before that, congratulate the ratepayers for putting out their email pointing out the council's resolution of the 14th of December 2015. I didn't know about it. It was before my time on council, but it was great to see it, and I'm pleased to see that Councillor McAndrew has picked up on that, and he, I think, even moved or seconded it at the time. So it's good that that the ratepayers drew attention to that, and it's come back into the mix. That's great. But I'd also like to move point 9, which is that we get a report be brought down on the damage and the time frame for the repair of the rail line between Lithgow and Mount Victoria. Now, this rail line is an important aspect of our community. It's our link to Sydney. Buses will work. I'd hate to see it as the opportunity for State Rail, as some of us suspect, is looking for any excuse to cut that rail line, to stop it at Mount Victoria. I'd like to get a report just so that we can address that, to find out if that's the case, and get a time frame. If we can get at this stage, while it's still early days, saying we understand it's down, we understand it needs to be repaired, but what's your time frame? When would it all happen? Let's get it in writing now so that we can deal with it properly. But let's face it, this problem of our fires is not something that's just going to go away when it rains. And the odd thing is, everyone's forgotten the drought. this drought is still going on, and this drought is just horrendous on people, and we need to start thinking how we need to further consideration on what we do about the drought. And I'd like to, if possible, ask Mr. Edgecombe or if there's reconsideration of putting in water restrictions in Lithgow. It was raised at our meeting in November, and I raised it at the time, and I withdrew it at the time on advice. I'm not going to move anything on that now, but I would like to have some idea if this thought about water restriction in Lithgow is being reconsidered. We have problems in our country with bushfires. We just need to think about it. We need to address it, and the comment that was raised by Mr. Ticehurst about a Royal Commission, that's where we need to go. A Royal Commission is what we need to do. What is where we have to get answers that is actually beyond Lithgow, answers that actually solve or address. I'm not sure we can solve, but certainly address the issues that are right across our country. And I'm moving that point that are as a point 9 as an amendment, that a report be brought down on the damage to and the time frame for the repair of the rail line between Lithgow and Mount Victoria.
Has he got a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second it.
Just before we vote on this or have any other councillor speak, General Manager would just like to make a statement.
Mr Mayor, councillors, just on the proposed amendment to the resolution, the Office of Emergency Management is staffed by the most senior state government reps. I understand it's going to be Deputy Secretary in the respective departments that form the committee. We today raised the issue of the Blue Mountains Railway line, its importance to Lithgow and to Bathurst and to Centennial Coal and to everybody else. They now understand and are willing to act on that as a priority. They certainly will have far much more pull with Sydney trains than we do. They have also agreed at our meeting today to brief this council at an information session on a regular basis, not just on the Blue Mountains line, but every aspect of the recovery process. So I don't think you need... I mean, the difficulty with the resolution is that we have limited access to the information, whereas you've got the people making the decisions coming out and briefing you on a regular basis, and they've indicated willingness to do that.
Mr Mayor, I understand that answer, but I see no problem in asking for this report. And if the answer that comes back with the report is exactly as the General Manager said, that's fine. But it needs to be put on the record now. Getting a verbal report from the General Manager is one thing, but actually getting a written report that's then presented to the community so it becomes part of our ongoing history is another matter. And I would recommend that we do proceed with asking for the report. It doesn't have to be detailed, it doesn't have to be long, but it has to be on the record.
Okay, any other speakers?
Yeah, look, I would have thought that the last point being requested by Councillor Leslie probably would have been better dealt with as an urgent motion. We'll be moving into urgent business shortly, and I would have thought that that would probably be the most appropriate place for it. I just want to simply make the point again that the item before us is about Council's response and Council's report in relation to the recent bushfires that hit our local government area, and if Councillor Leslie feels strong enough, then I can't see any reason why he can't then raise it as an urgent matter. I support it on that basis, but I don't see that it needs to be in this report.
Could I also get a response on my thing about the water and removing the bit on application?
Mr Mayor, we'd like to take that on notice and come back to you. I mean, obviously, we want to assist people where we can in relation to the bushfire, but council also has finances it's got to balance as well. So you've got millions, tens of millions of dollars worth of infrastructure to be looked at as far as your water infrastructure is concerned. So it's just a matter of providing an informed report back to council rather than just responding on the night to a question. I'd rather have the time to present a detailed report to council.
Okay, I shall put the amendment of Councillor Leslie of adding point 9. Those in favour? Those against? I declare it lost. I shall now put the motion with the 8 points, was it? 8 points? With the 8 points and the changes. Those in favour? Against? Unanimous. Okay, we move to urgent business.
Yes, Mayor, I have one matter that was raised tonight. I thought about adding it to the previous resolution recommendation, but for the reasons that I outlined in relation to the proposed additions to it, it wasn't appropriate. But I still think it's a matter of urgency, business of great urgency, because I don't know what the timeline is for this, that Council should put forward a submission for support for a Royal Commission into the bushfires impacting not only on our local government area but across the width and breadth of Australia. It is urgent. I don't know as I said, what timeline it is in relation to when those or what the process is, but it's been raised tonight, not only from the public forum but by Councillor Leslie as well, and I think we may not have any other opportunity to do it. So if you could deem it as urgent, Mayor, I'd appreciate that. So, Mayor, I'll be guided by yourself and the General Manager in relation to what form the request or the submission would be. I haven't had a close enough look at it to see what the process is, but I certainly believe as a fire-affected local government area, we should be supporting a Royal Commission into bushfires, not just picking up the issues of hazard reduction, but picking up all of those issues that have been mentioned not only by councillors but by people in the public forum tonight.
And that will most probably answer a lot of Councillor Coleman's questions as well. Yeah.
I'd like to bring up matter of urgency what Mr Tyso brought up tonight about the Zigzag Railway. If the New South Wales government doesn't get on board with this, we might never see it open again. They need help and they need it desperately. I deem it as we've said, it's been around for a long, long time, and for 7 years these poor people have struggled and struggled and struggled. They don't just need money, they need labour to get it done. Thank you.
I'm quite happy to deem that as a matter of urgency as well, considering what's happening up there on the line between Bell and Lithgow at the moment. So I deem that as great urgency. I'll put it to council though. Those in favour?
Mr Mayor, could I just clarify? Mr Tysus, do you have copies of your resolution? They're on the desk. Thank you. Matt, go down and get them.
So any other business of great urgency?
No charge.
That's all right.
I think we should consider the amendment that was lost from Councillor Leslie as a matter of great urgency in regards to the railway. Was that not going to be considered here and now? Councillor Leslie, were you not going to put that forward again?
I've taken the decision of the council not to proceed.
Would you need a rescission motion?
Well, I think that it should be brought up as a matter of great urgency. I think that we should consider getting a report in regards to, if you could just, in regards to the railway line between Lithgow and Mount Vic. I think that the railway is very important to Lithgow. It finishes at Lithgow. A lot of people depend on it in regards to their work. And I know at the moment that there's buses between here and Mount Vic, which makes the travelling to and from Mount Vic very difficult, especially for those who are seniors and travelling on the buses. That's quite uncomfortable, but so I think we should move forward on that.
Look, there's no problem whatsoever in getting a report. The only thing that I do see is that there is limited freight running now for the coal mines, and it's none yet. No. Well, I know that in the next couple of weeks there's going to be limited freight running, and there's also going to be diesels running between that area, which goes back to what Councillor Leslie said. There's always been a feel that they are going to finish the electric line at Mount Vic. I don't agree with that, but I'm quite happy to get a report back, even though I don't think that they'll have any idea of what the timeline will be. But I'm quite happy to deem it that way.
Mayor Thompson, given the comments that were made by the Graham Faulkner in relation to the senior staff working through the Office of Emergency Management, would it not be more appropriate to put the request for a timeline through that committee? They've got access to more senior staff, they've got a direct route through, rather than going through politicians.
What's the feel of the council? I rather like that, but
I'd rather we should go to the source. I mean, we really need to make this a matter of great urgency. As I said, people depend on the railway to go to work, and at the moment, seniors are having to catch buses to medical appointments and further afield. It's really uncomfortable. I think we should, get the report as I've already asked for.
Well, Mayor, it comes down to whether you deem it urgent. I believe it is, but it's not my call, it's yours. And if you do, then we can decide then what we want to do.
Well, look, I don't deem it as urgent, but I'll put it to council. If council deems it as urgent, I'm quite happy to go down those lines, but I certainly don't deem it as urgent. So I'll put it to council. That's it then. I don't deem it as urgent, no. Okay, no other business of great urgency, then I declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your attendance.